Halve vliegtuig. Ik nog een.
Good evening, everybody. If you could please grab a seat, and we'll commence with our evening kaupapa. So nā reira, māko e mihi nui atu ki a koe. You're the special guest tonight, and going to mihi to you in Māori. And what we normally do to start off an evening like this, we would actually take the wonderful opportunity in singing a song. I see you've got your ukulele there. So if you've got a ukulele and you're singing tonight, well, it's only best that we sing for you as well. Don't know what we're going to sing, but we'll soon find out. So everybody, we're going to sing a song called Te Aroha. And those of you who may know it, ka pai, then we're going to do a karakia in Te Reo Māori, and I'll translate as well, and then do a mihi in Te Reo Māori, and we'll sing another song. So we'll be as quick as possible. Mihi nui atu. Okay, can we please stand to acknowledge this wonderful evening? Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi Māori e, tātou tātou e, te te whakapono, me te rangi Māori e, tātou tātou e. E te atua ke konei mātu e mihi aka whetai ki a koe. Mo tā tātou hui rangatira e hui hui mai nei kei rora te tūni o tēnei whare. So we give thanks to our Creator who's the beginning and ending of all things. We thank Him for this hui. We've gathered here in Aotea to be able to acknowledge each other in the kaupapa for the evening. Nā reira, e te atua e mihi nui atu ki a koe ki te arahitanga ki tā tātou kaupapa rangatira. Te tainga mai ki tā tātou rangatira, ia māko ko te tū mai tēnei pō ki te kōrero. So our Heavenly Creator, we thank Māko for travelling all the way from his homeland to be here in Aotearoa and to share his wonderful expertise, his kōrero kei roto i aia. So we thank him for being here tonight. E tātua ke konei mātu ngā kai hautu rangatira. E mihi nui atu ana e pāna tō koutou karangatanga ki tā tātou hui. So we thank you for the gathering of people who have come with their expertise and listening to Māko, and to others, the panel, who are going to share their whakaaro and their thoughts. So we ask for your presence, your guidance, your wisdom, but most of all, your aroha. Tūturu whakamaua kia tīnā. Tīnā, haumi e hui e. Thank you. Please be seated.
That's great.
Nā reira te mea tutahi māku e tūake te mihi aka nei rā ki tō tātou matunui te rangi. E tukuna mai ana tēnei tā huatanga pai o tēnei rā, nā reira ka mihi. Nā reira e te atua e mihi aka nei rā e pāna ki tā tātou kaupapa. Te haerenga mai ki tā tātou whānau whānui o tēnā pito, o Aotearoa, e pāna te tautoko ake te karanga i a Māko, te harenga mai ki te kōrero kia tātou i tēnei pō. So we thank you for this gathering, and we thank you for the assembly of everyone who have gathered here tonight, and we thank you also for the wonderful leadership that we have, not only in Aotearoa but here in Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland. Nā reira, may you guide us always, i roto i tō tātou ariki, tūturu whakamaua kia tīnā, tīnā, haumi e hui e, tāia ki e. So Māko, there was an extended welcome to you in Te Reo Māori, and welcome to Aotearoa. Welcome to Ngā Maunga Tapu, the sacred mountains of Tāmaki Makaurau. Welcome to the whenua, to the land, and also knowing that the iwi of Tāmaki Makaurau also greets you and your expertise, your knowledge, and coming here to Aotearoa to talk to us. So as we sit here and we embrace the wonderful sights of the moana, we've known that you've been to the South Island and seen our wonderful country. So mihi nui atu ki a koe. So welcome, no mai, hara mai. Huri noa kia tātou i te whānau, tēnā koutou i ngā rangatira, ngā kaihautu, tēnā koutou, huri noa ki te whare, kia ora mai tātou katoa. I didn't play my guitar, but we sung for you. Kia ora mai tātou.
Okay. Oh, he not going to
tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. No. Is that better? Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. No Ingarani, no Horane, hoki oku tipunu. Ko taku mahi ki te Urban Room Foundation, ko Ben van Bruggen toku ingoa, no reira ngā mihi ki e koutou katoa. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. I'm Ben van Bruggen, founder of the Urban Room Foundation. Thank you to Richard, if he's still here. Richard, thank you for that. Thank you for welcoming us and welcoming our special guest. It means a lot to have you here, so we very much appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you also to Ashley and the Auckland Conversations crew, who it's always a delight to work with. I just put these ideas up and they make it all happen and get somewhere near like 500 people or something together in a room. So thank you, Ashley and team. And also thank you to the Urban Room donors and supporters. Without them, then we wouldn't be able to do these things that we're doing. Cities flourish when the people who live in them take ownership of it and help shape them. It's not just about the experts, the politicians, the council, it's about all of us. And many cities around the world or many successful cities around the world have urban rooms. These are places where members of the public, citizens, can walk in and can understand and see what's happening in their city and see how it's changing in an environment that's suited for them to be able to understand, explore. It kind of takes us out from these sort of boring documents and this endless, lengthy consultation that we end up with, and brings us back to something that's more akin to a civic conversation. Back in a few years ago, thanks to the help of some people who are in this room, we were able to borrow a space downtown on Quay Street. We borrowed the city centre models from Auckland Council and we put them on display. We opened the doors and we'd see what would happen. Over the course of just a few months, we ended up having 1,000 individual conversations with people from all places, not just the city centre, but tourists, visitors, residents, businesses, and most excitingly, lots of kids on skateboards would come in and talk about these models, and they had a clear understanding of what they wanted for the future. It was really inspiring. But then we had this broad spectrum of people who were able to come and ask questions about the city, not through a consultation, but through speaking to somebody. So we now want to make that permanent. We think Auckland and other cities in New Zealand deserves to have a permanent, publicly accessible city gallery where anybody can come to be inspired by what cities can offer them. So we have an organisation, the Urban Room Foundation. You can sign up and subscribe at theurbanroom.com. We're also a charity, and so we're relying on donations. And there is a point there which you are able to give us donations. If you want to become a patron and help us really get some seed funding to really launch this room, or you've got spare space in the city centre that you want to see activated, then please do get in touch. We're here to help. But this is your city, and we want to work together and stop watching what's happening and start taking part in what's really happening. So it's delightful. It's a delight for us to team up again with Auckland Conversations, here to have an inspiring and stimulating thinking about the challenges that Auckland is facing. For many decades, many cities have been designed around the idea that you move people and goods as fast as possible around a city. But beyond that movement, what makes a city truly successful? What city are we creating, and who are we creating this city for? Our keynote speaker will talk about the decisions about mobility are really decisions about what kind of city and society we actually want to create together. Our panel will give their different perspectives on what makes a city successful, what it means for Auckland's future as well. So thank you all for coming. It's a really great turnout, and thank you to those who are online as well viewing this. There's a little bit of housekeeping. The bathrooms are over to your left, that stage. If anything happens and we need to evacuate, then we will be gathering on the upper terrace grass out the front or out on Mayoral Drive, but we'll be directed by the wardens and staff who are here today. Please put your phones on silent, but leave them on. So please feel free to post on your socials, and we will be using Slido as a way of asking questions of the panel later. So to the presentation. We're very lucky and delighted to have Professor Marco T. Broemelstraat, Chair of Urban Mobility Futures at the University of Amsterdam. I nearly said Auckland. Not yet. Not yet. Amsterdam. I said Auckland in rehearsals. Founder of the Urban Cycling Institute and founding academic director of the Lab of Thought, sorry. Sorry, my Nederlands is niet zo goed. Niet zo goed.
Wow.
And then we're going to have a discussion. So we've got Richard Hills, the North Shore Ward Councillor and Chair of the Policy Planning and Development Committee, and also a trustee of the Urban Room Foundation, which we're delighted to have him with us. Stacey van der Putten, Chief Executive of Auckland Transport and a board member of the Public Transport Association of Australia and New Zealand. And Leonard Naut, Director of Mobicom Pacific. Thanks to the Public Transport Association for bringing Marco to New Zealand, and thanks to Mark, James, wherever he is, for making all this possible. Up the back, thank you. And also thank you to Leonard and Mobicon for actually helping us with making this event happen tonight. So with that panel, we'll also do a Q&A session, and as I said, you can use the Slido app. If you go to slido.com and put in #urbanism, hopefully, there we go, you will be able to ask a question of our panel, but you'll also be able to upvote other people's questions. So if somebody's asked something particularly interesting, insightful, or you would think, I was going to ask that, you can give it a little thumbs up, and it'll come up the list of what's happening. I think we are going to adjudicate it, so any rash statements may not make it onto the list. So we'll stick with the questions. Anyway, we always like to work to keep these events free. So the Urban Room Foundation it tries to make all of its events free to as many people as possible. And also that goes for Auckland Conversations and this inclusive and accessibility. So there is on-demand viewing, a full transcript and captioning will be available on the Auckland Conversations website over the next few days or week. So you can relive the experience there and send it to everybody. So, welcome in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. Marco.
The language that we speak is not a mirror of reality. The language that we speak profoundly shapes the problems that we identify, the solutions that we consider, and the reality that we together shape. That's it. That's what I want to bring across this evening. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the mana whenua of Tamaki Makaurau and pay my respects to their ancestors, their elders, and their whānau. Thank you for welcoming us. Thank you, Richard, for your beautiful introduction. And thank you for everybody who supported my travel here. I want to especially acknowledge again P-Tents for supporting my trip to New Zealand and Australia, and Ben, who had the kind words of introducing me, from the Urban Room Foundation, Leonard Naut of Mobicom Pacific, Councillor Richard Hills, and Stacey van der Putten of Auckland Transport for arranging what is for me a very thrilling event. It's very thrilling to be here and look to this full room of people that want to have this conversation. I also have some housekeeping things before we get started. Before we get started, I want to better understand the room that I'm in, and there are many of us, but I still want to ask you a few questions. And I'm going to ask you to vote on the questions. I'm going to ask you soon to stand up, if you're able to, and I will explain the voting, but it basically means that I will give you a statement, and if you agree with the statement, you keep standing up, and if you disagree with the statement, you sit down. If you cannot stand up, raise your hand and do a similar exercise with that. So please, everybody, if you're able to, please stand up. So this is our starting position. And be honest to me, because then that's for me a good way to see and gauge who is in the room today and what I have to stress and what I can sort of lay down. So the first statement that I'm going to give you is as follows. We need a mobility transition. If you agree with that, you keep standing. And if you disagree, you sit down. So we need a mobility transition. Sorry, do you understand the question? I have to explain here that a mobility transition is not a small feature. It's not getting a few people to drive less and go on a bike. A mobility transition means a transformational change of the system. Most of you are still standing. Okay. Then the second question is even more important, and it's a very personal one, so be honest to yourself. The statement is, I want to play a role in the mobility transition. So if you're standing, you want to play a role in the mobility transition. That's clear. Again, is the question clear? Because this means that we are a room full of people that think that we need a mobility transition and that we all want to play a role in that. Well, that's pretty awesome as a starting point. Then I have two more statements to sort of see if we are on the same page here. The next statement is, so again, if you agree, you keep standing up. The roads of national significance will not help us in the mobility transition. Okay, most people are still standing. And then the final one, however, the Dutch bicycle is an important element of the mobility transition. What an audience. Okay, you can sit down now. So we can go to the beers. It seems we all agree. Well, however, if you are still standing up after the first two statements, and you basically said, we need a mobility transition, and I want to play a role in that, there's a very important element of today's talk that I want to bring across. Because if you want to play a role in the mobility transition, you need to know the answer to the question, why were John Lennon and Yoko Ono in bed with a bicycle in 1969? We will go through an adventure together, and I will tell you a story that will sort of bring us to the answer at the end of today's talk. And I will keep sort of reminding you why this is so important. The adventure takes us through a bit of philosophy in the beginning. It's a bit hard, but no worries. It will all come together in the end. I will try to tie the philosophy of language together with more practical elements of the street. We will visit the forest for a while. I will sing a song. Not as good as Richard, but I will try. And I will teach you a magical trick. How great is that? And if I forget, at the end, I will ask a few, because I tend to forget, you need to remind me, somebody in the room needs to remind me that I need to tell you that you cannot be Bobo. Okay? If I forget, remind me, you have to tell us why I cannot be Bobo. So we can start. The start here is 1969, the Hilton Hotel in the city of Amsterdam. And we are looking at a famous picture of the newly wedded couple, John Lennon and Yoko Ono. They were just married, and as their honeymoon, they were traveling the world. And one of the places that they ended up was here in the honeymoon suite of the Hilton Hotel in Amsterdam. What we see here is that they were not only having a honeymoon, they were also protesting for world peace. And they were smart people, so they didn't glue themselves to the asphalt. They basically rented the most expensive suite in the most expensive hotel in Amsterdam and stayed there for 7 days. So this is known as the famous bed-in. And the bed-in took them to several places. We see them here in Amsterdam. In bed for 7 days, and partly at least in bed with a Dutch, rickety, old, sitting upright, single-speed, white painted bicycle. Why? And why is it so important for you to understand what this bicycle was doing in this bed? Well, when journalists entered the room and asked John Lennon why he actually was in Amsterdam, he could not produce a much better answer than, it's because of the vibes, man. Which is a complete lie. He was there because Yoko Ono wanted to be there, and he was just married to her, so he just followed Yoko Ono. Yoko Ono had a much better answer. She said, I want to be in Amsterdam because I want to be in contact with the counterculture. I'm interested in all those people, the end of the 60s, that are thinking about really changing society in Montreal, in Paris, and also in Amsterdam. So part of the answer is John Lennon was in bed with a bicycle because Yoko Ono wanted to be in bed with a bicycle. Okay, so we already have that covered. And there's one final thing that we need before we start our adventure. It's 1969, and they were in bed. And again, Yoko Ono, or John Lennon got all the credits, but it was really Yoko Ono that in this very bed with this bicycle, was thinking about the lyrics of a famous song. And if you are a good listener, you already heard it. What is the song? I'm a very bad ukulelist, but I know. So, yeah. So Yoko Ono in bed with the Dutch bicycle, thinking about the song Imagine. So that sets us off for an adventure, because why was there a bicycle in there? But more importantly, why do we need to know that? Well, that has to do with the opening statement. The language that we speak is not a mirror of reality. The language that you all speak when you think about the mobility transition profoundly shapes what you think about, what problems you identify, and what solutions you are working on. So the language that you speak is very, very important, and we need to understand what this language does. So Donella Meadows, she's one of my heroes, one of the main authors again. Her husband got all the credits, but she was the main author of Limits to Growth, 1973, the famous Club of Rome work, and she produced much more work, and she taught me this, that the language that we speak is not a mirror of reality, and why this is so important. To understand what's happening here, and I told you, I warned you a bit, we need to go into the philosophy of language. Language, what is language? What does language do? Language does three separate, different, but related things. The first thing that language does, by definition, it makes a necessary simplification of reality. So if we want to talk with each other and you do not want to listen to a hissing and puffing Dutch person, I need to speak the same language as you do, which means that I have a limited amount of words to explain complex reality. That is the human condition, right? Our language, by definition, makes us limited in describing complex reality, but language does that so that we can actually speak with each other. And this is why we are the species that are doing so well in terms of ourselves, you could say. So the first thing that it does is is giving us a simplification of reality. So if you want to explain this later today or tomorrow at home, I can imagine that you're full of energy and like, how can I explain this? Well, the best explanation is when we use metaphors. You use metaphors all day long. Our language is sort of constructed with metaphors. And metaphors are very direct simplifications of something that is complex, expressed in something that is slightly less complex. So I could say, in the Netherlands at least, soccer is war, right? Voetbal is oorlog. Football is oorlog. Or maybe then Australian rules, football is war. Or maybe closer, our life is a journey, right? It's a metaphor. Or love is a battlefield. And I'm giving away my age here, I guess. Love is a battlefield. Or maybe one that you all use, I'm pretty certain. Time is money. Yeah. Time is money, right? That's what we have been taught. We actually live our lives as if time is money, because that metaphor reduces the complexity of time into something that's slightly less complex, money, and that allows us in the Industrial Revolution to convince all of us that we could sort of exchange our time for money. That was great, great idea. So that is what language does. As a metaphor, it simplifies reality. So what happens, that's the second element, when you simplify reality, by definition, you make choices. You cannot escape this. I will not tell you that there's a language that doesn't do this. In any language, all the words that you use, you make choices. And to explain this, I bring you to the forest for the first time. And I have to tell you about the mistake I always make. With my neighbors, I have a WhatsApp group. And that's already mistake number one, I now realize. But that's for later when we have beers. What happens in this WhatsApp group follows the same dynamics. I'm that neighbor that shares pictures. Decent pictures, no, don't worry. And don't ask me why, but I just shared this picture. And what then happens is people start responding to it, liking it, having a debate. But within 5 minutes, I get a personal message by one of my neighbors, and her name is Marion. And Marion tells me, Marco, you did it again. You're sharing this picture. People start talking about it, but you forgot. I am blind, so I cannot see what's on the picture. Shit, I did it again. Sorry, Marion. I need to help you, and I have to send you one sentence, a short sentence to understand what is on the picture. So I need your help here. Who wants to help Marion? Just shout. What would you send, Marion?
Deer in the forest.
Deer in the forest. Deer on the road, in the forest. Deer on the road in the forest. No cars.
Slow down.
Sorry?
Slow down.
Slow down, nice, yeah. More. This side of the room. What would you send? Road going through a forest. More. Why did the deer cross the road? Excellent. Sorry?
Bambi lives.
Bambi lives. Yeah, the best one I heard so far was a man finds back his stuffed deer. Or roadkill. The point here is that what you're doing now, I asked you to use your brain to simplify reality, right? So this is still relatively simple visual, but you can still simplify it in many different ways. And the key point here is that it's not about finding the right simplification. The key point is that any of these simplifications are equally valid descriptions of the same reality, but they make choices. Like if you say that the deer is crossing the road, the problem becomes very different than if you would say the road is crossing the forest. Both are equally valid, both are simplifications of reality, but they make a profound difference. And why is this so important? Why do you travel all the way to New Zealand to tell this to a room of people? Well, you were all standing up, at least most of you expressed that you wanted the mobility transition and play a role in that. So then you have to understand the third element of language. Simplifying reality, making choices, and by the way, this is one golden nugget already. You have probably organized your life around the idea that it's correct that time is money, right? Do you all do that? At the end of the month, you get money for your time? Yeah. I need to tell you, this is wrong. It's wrong. Time is not money. People realize that later in life that actually time doesn't accumulate while money does. Time is running out. So that's already one thing to take out of this session today. Time is not money, and making us see time as money might be an incredible mistake in the way that we see time and live accordingly. And why is this so important? Okay, getting back to that, it's the third element of language and the most difficult word of this evening, performativity. So language simplifies reality, you make choices, then the choices perform. They create reality. So this is the forest, as described in the book by James Scott, Seeing Like a State. And in this book, he shows us how governing is language. If you govern something, you need indicators, you need KPIs, you need to sort of find the evidence to make the right decisions, right? But he shows us that this language is not a mirror, it performs. So let me explain what he means. We start here in the primeval forest, and the primeval forest, depending on your religious beliefs, hasn't been governed. It is just growing and has all kinds of dynamics in growing. And because of that, the primeval forest is a complex ecosystem. So if you look at this image and you are going back and take a deer perspective, the deer would see a perfect place to hide. A wolf, however, would see a perfect place to hunt. And I wanted to introduce a predator species from New Zealand in the story, but there isn't one. So you have to do with European examples. The bird sees a perfect place to nest, and all kinds of animals see perfect places to grow, to play, and to live. And the same goes for all the plants and the trees. And because of this, it became this complex ecosystem that serves these multiple different goals. So far, so good. But at the end of the 18th century, the humans needed something from the forest, and that required governing. So what did we need from the forest at the end of the 18th century? Timber, yeah, wood. Timber. The best answer again, just sort of to raise the bar here, there was one person in the room that said love. Just imagine what would have happened if we chose that. No, so it was timber and it was wood. We needed wood as a fuel, as a resource, and as a building material. And because of that, the people that owned forests wanted to understand how to govern their forest to optimize wood production, right? Makes a lot of sense. And what do you do then? You want a new language, so where do you go? Well, I can tell you this. You go to a university. Because at universities, there are only kind people. And they will always say, yeah, especially when you bring a bag of money. They will tell you, yeah, sure, we can create this new language for you. We create a new domain. And actually, you can study it until this day. It was invented on German universities. It's called scientific forestry. And you can get your master degree in scientific forestry and basically learn this new language of looking at forests as places for production of wood. So as I said, it's a German university. So there's also a very central German word that you learned today. And that is the word that is central in scientific forestry. It is Normalbaum, all capitals, Normalbaum. And that would translate here as the standard tree, or Standaardboom if you're Dutch. So the standard tree is this ideal, typical tree that tells you how you can optimize wood production with the minimal amount of energy put in it. So with that new language and that simplification of reality, we started to govern forests. And then it becomes performative, right? New simplification, we make a choice, and the primeval forest changes into the production forest. Or as you have a nicer word for that, I saw, the plantation forest. In the production forest, what you see is rows and rows and rows of standard trees. They're all from the same age, planted in the same lines, and all the bushes in between have been eradicated. So I can imagine that in 10 years from now, you think back of this evening where everything changed in your life and you want to have a reunion. I can imagine. So if you have that, I advise you to pick out the closest production forest that you can find and play hide and seek. Because as you can see here, that will bring you very quickly to the barbecue. Hide and seek is no longer possible because what happened in the production forest, we chose the simplification of wood production, we had the standard trees, and everything else disappeared. All the other goals of the forest disappeared, right? It's no longer a place to hide, it's no longer a place to hunt, it's no longer a place to nest. It became this one specific, efficient production machine. And this didn't happen in one forest. It actually, I think yesterday we were close to Cambridge, where they boasted to have the largest, or at least, well, I think it was the third largest production forest of the world. So I can vouch that this also happened in New Zealand. But I brought you some evidence from Europe, which shows that every forest in Europe, to some degree, has been impacted by this logic of the standard tree of wood production. So all the forests have been adopted in this language that we chose in the end of the 18th century. And now I can ask you a question, but what do you think? Which of these two types of forest produces the most wood? And you feel it's a trick question, right? So this is a pub quiz question. It's actually the first. Because by looking at the forest from an efficiency perspective, this is what happens if you look at complex systems through an efficiency lens, you lose resilience. So forest, this is a picture from a production forest in the middle of Germany, where 60% of the trees have been killed by one beetle. And it was not John Lennon. And it's also not one beetle, by the way, not that you think that there's a giant beetle roaming Germany. It's one species, it's called the Borkenkäfer, or Letterzetter in Dutch. One type of beetle could profit from the fact that the forest lost its resilience, the weather got warmer, and it basically could destroy the entire forest. So this is system failure. We have eradicated all the other goals out of the forest, but even the actual goal that we were after, we didn't actually meet. Okay, enough of the forest. Let's go to the street. So my argument today is, to understand change, we have to understand that our streets today are the result of a change that happened around 100 years ago. So I call this the primeval street. So in the 1920s, you can find pictures like this everywhere around the world. This is Mulberry Street, Little Italy, in the middle of New York. And what you see here is called the remaining space between buildings, because until the 1920s, streets weren't governed. There wasn't a minister, there was no department. It was public space that happened to be, because if you build a city over millennia, you need space to actually reach the buildings. And because of this street space served many different goals, right? The primeval street, you can see here, serves that people can actually use it to trade, to sell stuff and to buy stuff in front of their own houses. Children can play right in front of their doorstep. People meet each other. They use the street as urban living room, the urban room, you could say. Might be actually the street in the 1920s. And they also met the proverbial other. And if you look carefully, you can already see in the 1920s that the street was also used for mobility, for movement. And all of these things happened, just as in the primeval forest, ungoverned. So they happened, was not always nice, but they happened in a sort of a complex equilibrium. Well, not today. Something changed in the 1920s that made us realize we needed a new language to think about our streets. So what happened in the 1920s? Motorcar. Motorcars, it sounds logical, but was the motorcar invented in the 1920s? No, it wasn't. They invented jaywalking, for sure. After that, you're a well-read audience.
Beetle that eradicated stuff.
Yeah, it was also a beetle, yeah, exactly. Electricity, no, so what the answer, so that's a very big room, so I will give you the answer that was already given in the middle. It's not the car. The car existed for 40 years already, around 40 years, but it was an elitist product. Actually, it was in the US, there was a red flag law, that if you brought your vehicle into the city, you had to have a person with a red flag walking in front of it. But what actually happened is that the production of cars was connected to mass production. And suddenly, the car became available for the masses. And literally, that meant that cars were rolling on the street from the conveyor belt. But there was no language for it. There was no rules. You didn't need to have a license. You can just have a car. There were no even rules. Nobody knew how to turn left or right, in the case of New Zealand. They didn't know how do you do parking. Where can you not park? Where can you park? So that obviously didn't go down very well. And there are many stories around this. So I really advise you, if you're interested, to read the book Fighting Traffic by Peter Norton, a historian. But he shows what happens in the 10-year time period between the 1920s and 1930s. And in the 1920s, we start with a very bleak situation. So huge, heavy, motorized vehicles enter the street, the remaining space between buildings, and the people that drive it kill children by the numbers. Like it's crazy if you look back how many children were killed by car drivers. And luckily, we had a language for that, but you have to go back in time to understand. So this is a bit weird, but 100 years ago, we actually considered children to be small adults, or small humans, you could say, small humans, whose brains were not fully developed, right? It's weird. And it actually meant that adults had to take care of the safety of children. So we were not allowed to kill children. Yeah, I know it's weird. So in the 1920s, that was the starting point. And the language that we used to discuss this was the language of justice. So especially the mothers, they really got full attention. And almost everybody supported them and said, we can't have this innovation because it's unjust to kill children as adults. Well, that changed. And it took only 10 years' time, which is a bit frightening, but also empowering if you think about it. It only took 10 years to completely flip the script and develop a new language. And that new language wasn't about justice. It was about control, efficiency, and the right of the individual car driver. And that happened slightly, it was also small changes, right? You can imagine being a parent of a child and thinking, well, it's very unjust and stuff, but please at school, can you tell our children that they should take care and they should not just walk into the street? And the schools did that. And as a result, newspapers in the 1925-26 started to write about children suddenly walking into the street. So a bit of the blame could be shifted already in 1925. And this sort of further and further solidified into this new language. And the new language that we used to think about the street was not coming to us in a vacuum. It actually came in a period where we started to see cities also as failing primeval cities, and we needed to rethink them as optimized, efficient urban machines. So Le Corbusier here was one of the fathers of this thinking, and he literally thought, and his friends, that people would be happy if they would live in efficient cities where hunger would be eradicated and economic growth would be the core purpose. And in his Le Ville Radieuse, one of his plans for in this case, a new neighborhood in the middle of Paris, he defined one key principle. And that was called death to the street. And death to the street literally meant People want to be efficient in this efficient machine. They are either efficient at A or they are efficient at B, but not in between. So the street should only cater for shuttling individuals as quick and comfortable as possible from A to B. Traveling is a derived demand. And what we need from the street is we need to eradicate all these other users because we need it for this one single purpose of shuttling people from A to B. But the best intentions, the principle was optimize the machine and marginalize the human. And with this language, we came up with a new language to think about the streets. So we go back to the 1920s and think about how this new language emerged. The new language at the time was probably a bit ridiculous. New metaphors were brought in. We had to laugh at them, but these choices solidified. So the choices we made in the end 1920s, early 1930s became guidelines, they became norms, they became models. They solidified into institutions, into laws, into rules, and into your behavior. In 1936, overnight, you were no longer a human on the street, you were a pedestrian. And as a pedestrian, you had to follow certain rules. And if you don't follow those rules, people will honk at you, or you will even get a fine. Nobody asked you, you just suddenly were part of this new system. It solidified into the steel and concrete and asphalt that you see outside. And now we have reached the final stage of solidification. The language that we chose to speak in the 1930s solidified our imagination. If we have conversations about the future of mobility, we tend to be stuck in the same language that created the problem in the first place. So we need to understand where this language came from. And I bring you to the Netherlands, where many think that we figured it out. Hire us, and we will show you the sustainable, safe, conflict-free intersection that goes viral on Reddit at least 4 times a year. And why is that? Because apparently we did it. We did it. We created the solution that traffic engineers were looking for. So we have to go back to the first phases of that. 1930s, we're all black and white. Children are being killed by the numbers outside, so there's some sense of urgency. We need a new language. I already told you, it's called traffic engineering. Traffic engineering, I came up with the word, but I need your help because we need to go to the university, just like with the scientific forestry. But you need to tell me, what department are we going to? So who are we going to ask to write the first syllabus? We will come with money, so they will say yes, but we need to know which department do we go to. So who has any idea? Yeah. Ah, very good. Other ideas? Town planners. And here? City planners? Yeah, no, we didn't do that. Engineers? Economists? We didn't do that either. Philosophers, that would be nice. Yeah, we didn't do that. Law school, didn't do that either. Car companies, it's often suggested, but we have to realize that they were small, they were tiny. They became big because of the language. Yeah. Children, parents, not all of them. It is actually the water engineers. The water engineers, at the time, had the biggest manna of all, because they solved 2 huge issues of society by solving comfort issues in cities. They created water pipelines, and by solving hygienic issues by creating sewage systems. So it was logical to go to them and say, hey, here's some money, so write the first syllabus and create the first traffic engineers. So make them think of this new language. So we have to think about the water engineer now. Okay, so to get into the head of the water engineer, writing the first syllabus, who of you has seen the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Raise your hands. It's fine. So few people, I do not believe that. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage with a half shell, turtle power. It's fine. Not in real life, I mean in the cartoon. Okay, many didn't, apparently. Okay, I don't believe, but okay. So for those who didn't, four turtles that happened to be in some sort of mishap, and they became human-sized. So human-sized turtles, 4 of them, somehow named after Italian painters, that you can forget about that. And there's a rat. It's a human-sized rat, and the 5 of them fight for the good of society. Right? In a cartoon. Don't worry, not in reality, I think. I don't know, I think. In a cartoon. So where do they live? Oh, now everybody knows, right? Yes. I've never seen it, but I think that they live in the sewage of New York. They live in the sewage. Why? Why can human-sized creatures live in a pipeline under the ground, which you had to make as small as possible for efficiency gains? So what is the most important thing that should never happen to a sewage pipeline for a water engineer? What can never happen? Oh, nice. What an audience. It should never be clogged, right? It should never, ever be clogged. So you design a sewage pipe for this once in a 10-year flood of water. So 9 years and 364 days, human-sized turtles can live in your pipeline. Not saying they are, they could. That's our streets. That's the metaphor we used. We designed streets as pipelines that can never be clogged. The biggest problem is congestion. They can never be clogged. Right? So even if, so when they are clogged, we talk about it all the time. We need to solve it. And if we don't solve it, we get waterbed effects, right? Traffic needs to flow. All these metaphors came from the book of Water Engineer. But the water engineer was not dumb, so he knew that if he would compare people to poop and pee, not many people would join his degree. So instead what he did, smart guy, he went to another department, the biology department, because they also had sort of the meme of the time. They were understanding the human body, very complex system, as you all know, you embody it, but also very elegant. And it led to all kinds of metaphors that we sort of borrowed to make this story more attractive. The CBD of the city, for instance, we call the heart. It's the heart of the city. The heart of the city needs to pump. And you all live in the urban tissue. In the urban tissue. And to go from the urban tissue to the heart, you travel through? Arteries, yeah, traffic arteries. So the traffic arteries go to the heart. So if you go to the cardiologist, which I hope you never do, but what will the cardiologist tell you should never happen to your arteries? It fits. It should never be clogged, right? It's the biggest problem. In fact, this problem became so dominant that until today, you can turn on any radio station, and within half an hour, you would hear about congestion. Something is congested. That's not nice. Something is clogging up the system. 360 minutes on average per week per radio station, 6 hours. We get bombarded with what is apparently the biggest societal problem, right? There's not a single other problem that gets so much free airtime on the radio. So it fits. We have this. We think of pipelines. The streets are pipelines or arteries that should never be clogged. But we're not there yet. To understand this intersection, other things were added. In between, we looked at physics. We built models. And gravitational models were used to understand the city as sort of as planets that were interacting with each other. And their travel time was sort of the negative thing, right? Remember? So the gravity model suggests that if you create easier conditions to travel, you have more interactions between the planets. So they basically get closer together. Great. And we added more, because at some point, we needed to model you. We couldn't build all the things that we wanted, right? We can't build all the roads of national significance. We have to make choices. And to do so, we have to model you, because you are not poop, you are not pee, you are not blood, you are even more annoying. You are all of you, everybody here in the room, and the people watching online, you are all egoistic, isolated, calculating, cold-hearted individuals who only optimize your own utility. Correct? Cold-hearted, egoistic, isolated individuals who are only interested in their own personal utility. Correct? Right? Yeah. That's on your Tinder profiles? Is that on your LinkedIn? That's who you are. In the traffic models, until today, that we use to calculate where to solve congestion, we are simplifying you as Homo economicus. And Homo economicus is this egoistic, isolated individual interested in optimizing their own utility. And remember, Le Corbusier, being underway is a disutility. So since then, automatically, magically, all political parties agree that the dominant thing that we should all throw our money at is travel time savings. Because being on the way is a disutility. So we need to make it easier for all you egoists to travel as easy as possible from A to B. That's what we spent like 50 years of money on. And since many of you were nodding, since you're all egoists, you can help me out here. And if you have the right answer to this, you can get a Nobel Prize. Thomas Schelling got a Nobel Prize for this. He actually used this intersection as an example. And he said something. And if you have the right answer, again, Nobel Prize material here. So do your best. If two egoists meet, what can they not do? Give way to each other, almost. Agree? Not Nobel Prize yet. Maybe here. What can two egoists not do? You're all egoists. You meet each other. What can you not do?
Give way.
Give way. Talk to each other. Oh, so close. Too bad. This evening, no Nobel Prize. You cannot negotiate. Okay? You cannot negotiate because you have nothing to negotiate on. You just want to optimize your own utility. So again, we needed to make the conflict-free intersection, where everybody now has its own pipeline, and in the Netherlands, even a red one, specifically for cyclists. But whenever they meet, two egoists, every time you meet somebody on the street now, you are in a conflict. So that means that every time we meet here, we have friction or not. On the street, you have a conflict, and we need to have zero conflicts. So this intersection is optimized. The machine is optimized. The human is marginalized because they created the greatest invention since the Normalbaum is the Dutch word for this system. It's called the verkeersregelinstallatie. The traffic light. And with the traffic light, we conditioned all of you egoists to just look at the light and wait for the colors to change, and then you move. Solved it. The machine has it. Well, you have to stick to that. If you make a mistake, it might basically mean the end of either your or somebody else's life. But we did it. The conflict-free intersection. That's what we see here. It's just metaphors of, at first, water engineering, then biology, then physics, and then the economy, leading to this being our new public spaces. The production street. Oh yeah, by the way, children can no longer play here. And we need to tell them that. In the Netherlands, we had a street play day for a while. Street play day was very nice. One day a year, the children could still play on the street. That's a nice gift. Well, not according to the Road Safety Organization. Paid for by the car industry. They told the children, no, you know how dangerous it is to play on the street. You can't tell them that. So they changed the name, and now it's called Buitenspeeldag, or Playing Outside Day. So I will give them 10 years, and then it will be Play Day. And then maybe just day. The children have to be disciplined as well. We have to give them high vis. We need to give them helmets. And we need to tell them that they need to look right, left, right before crossing. Push the back button and thank people. Cross while paying attention. Don't bring a ball. Don't wobble. Don't be distracted. The street is now the most dangerous place for children around the Western world. It's the #1 cause of death for children. Oops. Oh, and also we gave you zebra crossings. That's nice, right? But indeed, we also invented jaywalking. So you're no longer able to just cross the road because then you're impeding traffic, and you don't want to do that. Congestion, remember? Oh, we don't want that. So what happened here? To recap. So we moved from the primeval forest through the language of efficiency and wood production to the production forest. And similarly, we moved from the primeval street, the remaining space between buildings, with the language of efficiency, throughput, and individual travel time savings to this beautiful production street, Mulberry Street today. Optimized for throughput and for your egoistic individual rights to park your vehicle in front of your house. But all the rest is gone. There are no children playing on Mulberry Street anymore. The neighbors are not meeting each other anymore. There's no trade happening, but all because of good reasons, right? We did it. We solved it, right? There's no congestion anymore in Auckland, right? We did. It cannot be after 70 years of doing this. And I didn't Google that at all. No, I didn't. Oh, apparently we are not meeting the target. So are we facing again a system failure or system collapse? Is the roads of national significance just another round of system failure? I think we're not there yet. But it definitely is, we are running into problems because we can't even afford it anymore. We can't afford building the roads. We cannot even afford to maintain them. Across the globe and also in New Zealand, this is becoming much more of a reality. But what do we do then instead? So we have a problem, we didn't solve it. What do? We ask the smartest people in the room for solutions, right? Of course not. Why would you do that? No, we ask the richest people in the world for their solution. And what they do is, now you see it, right? They reproduce our language. They say, well, actually, you want to have travel time savings and you don't want congestion. So give us all your money, give us all your political attention, give us your street space, give us your legal staff, give us all your, did I say money already? Yeah, give us all your money and more money, and then we will give you almost optimal travel time savings. And yes, it looks a bit like a water pipeline on stilts, but we will give you the Hyperloop. And now you can travel with 1,000 kilometers per hour from A to B. Nah, you cannot look outside. That's a small detail. But who wants to do that? Because you're either puking or you took a pill against nausea. Because on these speeds, you basically cannot function as a human. So you basically pop up somewhere and you had 0 travel time. How great is that? No. No, says the German car industry, do not do this. Give us all your money. Give us all your money. Give us all your resources, your political attention. Give us your street space. Give us all your rules and your behavior and money. We really need your money. And then we give you the real final solution to all of this. 0 travel time if you are traveling in the self-driving vehicle. Look at that. Look at that. Wow. You wanted this, right? So we give you the self-driving vehicle. The algorithm will solve all the conflicts for you. And you can go from A to B, from home to work, doing other things. Like, yeah, I guess we have to do some studies on this. We will bring some money to university. Maybe look at commercials or checking your email. And this is probably the point where you come to realize that, oh, wait a minute, wasn't this why they were in bed with a bicycle? Because the bicycle, the Dutch bicycle, they can never do that, right? It doesn't fit here. That's why we all think it's such a good part of the mobility transition. Because sitting upright on a bicycle like this will never win you the Tour de France. It's not efficient. So something is there, some magical thing that you think, well, the Dutch bicycle will never fit in the same language, in the same model, in the same system, right? 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 Well, actually, the Dutch go around the world now and say, give us all your money, give us all your attention, give us all your political will, your legal staff, give us money, a lot of money, and we will present to you, this is the future of the Dutch bicycle industry, we will present to you the Dutch bicycle as part of the solution. Now you can have e-bikes, speed pedelecs, smart helmets. You can have bike logistics or your own pipelines. We call them bike highways or super highways or super bicycle highways or super bicycle highways. And if you're traveling there, and on the left you can see you can travel there with your husband, but if it's really boring, you can have a Skype call while you're on a bicycle. Such a great new pipeline system. Give us all your money, and this will be the future of your city. But if this was why John Lennon and Yoko Ono were in bed with the bicycle, I would imagine that the song would have sounded radically different. Imagine bicycle highways moving fast from A to B. Speed pedelecs and e-bikes to move more efficiently. Smart bikes and smart helmets to optimize the machine. Hoo-hoo. Yeah, thanks. I was actually born 8 days after John Lennon was shot. So I might be a reincarnation. So that might explain why it was so close to the original. We are close now, though. Why is this such a problem? Because obviously they were not in bed with the bicycle for this reason. And I think it's so important, if you think that the bicycle is part of the mobility transition, to understand why this is so problematic. Because just as with wood production, the real system failure is deeper than we think. The language doesn't deliver. More mobility did not become a gravitational force. It is actually the opposite. It's centrifugal. We are not winning travel time. 70 years of investing in travel time savings, this is Dutch data, but it can be reproduced for any country, shows us that instead of saving travel time, we are spending now 7 times as much distance with exactly the same travel time. No travel time was won, not a single second, but we are losing proximity and we are getting dependent on travel distance to get to the same activities. We are not getting closer together, we are moving further apart. And this logic depletes us, right? Not depending on your ideology, it depletes our resources, it depletes our finances as a society and as families. It depletes us in terms of our environment. It's taking away so many qualities that New Zealand is so famous for. And it depletes us as humans. Today, 1 person will be killed in this very system. And tomorrow again. Every 27 hours in New Zealand, somebody gets killed in the mobility system. This depletes us. It depletes us as society, it depletes us as humans, as individuals. If every day 1 door in New Zealand gets knocked on to tell them that their father, mother, or child is no longer coming home. Imagine the depletion. We get tired of this. And if we keep reproducing the same system, if we keep seeing the street as somewhere where we have to optimize the machine and marginalize the human, but now with bikes, we will not achieve a mobility transition. You will only achieve a real mobility transition if you question the underlying narrative. If you don't do that, next time, don't stand up. You are optimizing the existing system. It's perfectly fine. We need people doing that. But the mobility transition can only occur if you're willing to challenge the underlying narrative that created the system in the first place. And you can do it, and I can show you. Are you ready for the magical trick? Yeah. Are you ready for the magical trick? I'm going to show you something that you can never unsee. It's a free magical trick that you can take home afterwards. It's not scary, but if you really don't want to do that, you can still leave the room. I'm going to take you through 3 steps. That's what the trick entails. And the second step is especially hard for men. I don't know why. Don't ask me, but I will help you. So again, I will ask you all to stand up if it's possible for you to stand. And the first step is relatively simple, and everybody can join here. You pick a finger of your liking. Left, right, depending on your political motives, I don't care. It's your evening, and it can be an impolite or polite finger. Choose a finger and point it towards the ceiling. As high as you can, you point the finger towards the ceiling. Higher. Okay, so what you're now going to do is step 2, and this is the same in every time zone across the world. You're going to look at your finger, and you're going to make clockwise circles. But weirdly enough, men have a hard time doing this. But that's fine, because everybody looks at their own finger now, making clockwise circles along the ceiling, and while they keep doing that, you can sync your clock. You can take a look, and I would advise you to take a look at the finger of somebody close by who is a woman, and sync your clock. Syncing your clock will help you not make a fool out of yourself, so you have a few seconds left to do that. Your finger should now make circles along the ceiling that are clockwise with the clock. And what you're going to do now in the final step, you're going to lower your finger. You keep making the circles, and you lower it in front of your face. So it's sort of a spiral in front of your face. Make the same circles. Now you're in front of the face. And if you didn't look in the lamp like I did, you now see me. Now you can go lower. Lower still, lower still, lower still. Look at your finger and tell your neighbor what direction your finger is turning. What direction is your finger turning? Why are people laughing? What happened? It's still going clockwise. Are you sure? What happened? So what is happening? You're looking down. What happened? Tell me what happened. Oh, we have a winner on the right side of the room. No Nobel Prize, but still, you can sit down. So did you hear, so what happened? What happened? Yeah, you changed perspective. You heard the right answer, right? Because there's a wrong answer that sometimes people give, and they say, my finger is turning the other way around. That is not what happened, and it's crucial for the story here, for our adventure, because the system is still the same. The mobility system still exists and it's doing the same thing, but you changed your perspective. You can do that. You have actually the power to change your perspective. And what is your perspective? Your perspective is your language, right? It's not a mirror of reality. And I actually brought a friend, and she's waiting for us, Lara Boroditsky. She's a linguistic professor, and she can tell us why language is such a powerful perspective and why you want to change it. So, Lara, can you tell us what is so important in linguistic diversity?
Well, the beauty of linguistic diversity is that it reveals to us just how ingenious and how flexible the human mind is. Human minds have invented not one cognitive universe, but 7,000 languages spoken around the world. And we can create many more. Languages, of course, are living things that we can hone and change to suit our needs. I've told you about how speakers of different languages think differently, but of course, that's not about how people elsewhere think. It's about how you think. It's how the language that you speak shapes the way that you think, right? And that gives you the opportunity to ask, why do I think the way that I do? How could I think differently? And also, what thoughts do I wish to create?
So the language that you speak is not the marketing department. The language that you speak shapes the thoughts that you have. That's amazing, right? It's amazing. The language that you speak, therefore, can give you the opportunity to think, what thoughts do I wish to create? What is the mobility transition? What kind of language do I want to speak? What kind of stories do I want to create? Which conversations do I like to have and which not? And your language defines all of that, and this is the answer to the question why this young couple was in bed with a bicycle. I have to throw John Lennon for the bus as many times as possible, because again, it wasn't because of him. He actually arrived at the Hilton Hotel in his Rolls Royce, and he was an Aston Martin collector. So we have to again turn to Yoko Ono. Yoko Ono, as I said, wanted to be in contact with the counter movement, so she didn't bring the bicycle, but she brought in the Provos. And the Provos was the counter movement in Amsterdam in the 1960s and 1970s. And for them, the bicycle was simply a powerful symbol, a magical symbol almost, that connected all kinds of artists, NGOs, and activists into one single statement. Their key statement, if you want to learn any Dutch today, it's this one. De fiets is iets en bijna niets. De fiets is iets en bijna niets means the bicycle is something and nothing at the same time. It represented for them really this magical symbol, and especially painted white. For them, it represented the end of brutal capitalism. That's what they called it. They said, the bicycle can help us to go beyond where the car has brought us. We don't want to live in a city that is an efficient machine. We want to live in a society where love and human life is central. We don't want to live in a city where going from A to B is a disutility. It is where life happens, on our streets. We need to recapture that. And all of that was represented in the bicycle. It helped them to see a different future and to develop a real new narrative around what societies we wanted to build. And a long story short, I think that the Netherlands squandered this potential. We didn't use it to really change society. We actually used it to give the bicycle a place on the table of traffic engineering. And it was a wise decision. But I want to give you the opportunity to be as magical as John Lennon and Yoko Ono in bed with that bike. So I'm going to take you in this final bit to the city of Amsterdam. And if you have never been there, I always need to warn you that in the next video, nobody gets hurt. Right? It's perfectly normal behavior. Nobody, I think, is wearing a helmet, and still nobody gets hurt, so don't worry about that. And I will bring you to two different intersections, and on both intersections I went together with a different colleague of the University of Amsterdam. The first time I brought a traffic engineer, and we are in the middle of the very busy center of Amsterdam, and he told me, what I see here is a very busy intersection. There's all these conflicts between egoists that want to go from A to B as fast, as quickly, and as seamless as possible. But nothing is helping them to solve these conflicts. Give your money to me and I have a solution, he says. We can build here a traffic light, a verkeersregelinstallatie, or maybe a roundabout that will solve all the conflicts. That is what we do. I said, thank you very much. I went back to the same intersection, but now I took a sociologist colleague. And a sociologist told me, actually what I see here is what we call a potential exposure to diversity. And this potential exposure means that people are meeting each other in public space. They're not only meeting each other, they're actively negotiating. And this means that they are exchanging information, which is a very important element of how society functions. You can see it here, that there's more diversity than in a room like this, right? In the city's urban space, you are literally meeting each other. I said, thanks. I'm now going to take you to a second intersection because you need to explain to me the details. This is a shared space behind Central Station, and the traffic engineer went mad. He said, there are no rules here. And without rules, this cannot function. All these egoists, they will just bump into each other. They cannot arrange their own negotiations. We need to solve it for them. Luckily, I have the solution. We will introduce a verkeersregelinstallatie, or a roundabout, to solve the conflicts between all these individuals. I said thanks, and walked back to come to the same intersection, but now with the sociologist. The sociologist said, no, wait a minute. What we see here is what we call negotiation in motion. You remember these crazy Dutch people, the Dutch bicycle, back pedal brake, sitting upright? That's because they use all their senses to exchange information. They use their ears, their eyes, their kinetic posture on the bike. Even the position of the feet are used as micro negotiations with other people to dance. It's a choreography. There are rules. Nobody wants to bump into each other. They respond to each other with very small changes of the trajectory and speed. They are professionals in that. But if you're ever a tourist there, don't do the following. Never put your foot down. Always keep moving. It will work out. So what we then did is we looked up what potential exposure to diversity and negotiation in motion, what it actually does. And there's a lot of evidence that it has a very important role to play in society. If people are exposed to each other instead of sitting in the self-driving car looking at commercials, they actually report a higher sense of membership, a higher sense of influence, a higher sense of integration, higher fulfillment of needs, more shared emotional connections, sense of neighboring, collective efficacy goes up, citizen participation goes up, sense of community goes up. They have a higher sense of belonging, a higher sense of place, but the last one might be the most important one. Exposure to diversity makes us trust each other. It's such an important glue that we have to meet other people in public space that it's actually leading to more trust in each other. So I heard that you are going to get a new ministry, right? So imagine that this new ministry takes these characteristics to define where to spend their money, instead of the non-existing travel time that we're chasing with the roads of national significance. What would it mean if we would change our focus on a city where actually trust, sense of belonging, and sense of place become the dominant things? You can do that. You can change your language. We are with 500 people here. If we cannot do it, everything is lost. What if we optimize humans and marginalize the machine? You can do that. There was one thing I should tell you. I forgot. What was it? Bobo. Oh yeah, sure. You know who Bobo is? You don't know who Bobo is? Some people think that Bobo is a blue elephant. Bobo does not like that. Bobo is not a blue elephant. Bobo is a dog. And Bobo is a dog, and I want to show you the behavior of Bobo, because I think it's really close to our own behavior, and we can learn a lot from Bobo. So we will call Bobo and see what happens. Bobo. Bobo?
Come here, Bobo. Come. Good girl. Come. Good girl. Come on. Come on, Bobo. Come on, Bobo. Come on. Come here. Come on. Come on. Come here. Come on.
So my sociologist colleague told me that if you show Bobo to an audience and they start laughing, that's called a coping mechanism. Because what's happening to Bobo is happening to all of you. You have an inner Bobo. And the inner Bobo will tell you that how great this evening was, tomorrow you cannot do it. You can't just step through the door. You can't just start using a different language because that's not how the money is distributed. That's not how the ministry talks. That's not what's written in the YouTube comments or in the newspaper. You can't do it. And you will have this moment. I trust that you will have it. And I trust all of you, you're with 500, to keep each other's Bobo in check. Embrace your inner Bobo. It's fine. He can be there. But don't let it stop you from really finding a new narrative. You don't need somebody like me to open the door for you. There is no window. You can have different conversations, and we can start with that today. Because the language we use is not a neutral mirror of our reality. Instead, it profoundly shapes the reality around us. It influences what we see, it influences what we do not see, and it influences which actions we undertake. So radical change happened in the past, 70 years, but it isn't something that now should happen in the future. It should start right here and now, in this very room. Remember that language is not about how other people think elsewhere. It shapes the way that you think. So the question you should ask today to yourself is, what thoughts do I wish to create when I think, talk, and design about the mobility transition? And which thoughts do I not want to create? Maybe you can stop seeing being underway as a quantity to be reduced. You can start forcing yourself to see it as a quality that actually needs to be increased. Maybe you want to stop strengthening the egoistic consumer of mobility and space, but instead strengthen ourselves as social beings, as citizens, who are all very able to have a meaningful discussion and conversation about real trade-offs. Maybe we should stop seeing the street as a place where we have to optimize the machine, and instead, we're a place to reduce the machine and let humanity thrive. This is our choice. And actually, it's not, because I'm flying out of here tomorrow. So if I'm honest, it's your choice. And with your choice, I don't mean the group. I mean all you individuals here in the room have to make a choice today. What language do you want to speak when you create the mobility transition? I wish you all the best with that, but what I definitely wish you is a lot of fun with it. Thank you very much.
Many things. Ena mana, ena reo, ena rauranga tinama, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Ngāpuhi toko iwi, ko Richard Hills toko ingoa, ko no Glenfield ahau, he kai kaunihera o Tamaki Makaurau. Kia ora everyone, and just want to give one more round of applause for Marco. Just want to quickly acknowledge Richard again, and Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei. Richard had to leave to go to a tangi, unfortunately, but just want to acknowledge him, and also mana whenua for the land we're standing on, but also being so involved in this space, making spaces for people again and understanding. And if you haven't had a look, go down to Te Hanoa on Victoria Street and go and see the new Horatū and Wahine. That's two amazing sculptures that I've seen kids playing on and people stopping and standing there having conversations in what was previously the middle of the street. So, there are things happening that I think that we can be proud of, but there's a long way to go. I had some reflection. Well, I thought I would have some better reflections, but I just wrote lots of words like bicycle in bed, forest, time is money, Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles are a thing. My 4-year-old son has little figurines of Ninja Turtles, but I hadn't considered despite in this role working with streets and water and everything a lot, I hadn't really ever, for some reason, considered the flow and the basically trying to put everyone in pipes to move around the city, as opposed to the congestion issue that we're facing and hearing about, and the 365 minutes a week of hearing about congestion, but once you're in it or once you're going to it, you can't really do anything about it anyway. I don't think I've ever changed
We wait all the time everywhere, and we're never in the news.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I guess from a council's perspective, this gives me a lot of food for thought. I definitely love the forest analogy, what a natural forest is, and we're starting, you can go to a prehistoric forest in this city and kind of understand it completely differently to many of the forests and the production forests, but also how broken that system is if we just uniform everything. And some of my colleagues definitely don't see the wood for the trees. Or the forest for the trees? I said it wrong. But no, I just want to acknowledge all the work you've done. I think you've done 22 different engagements around Aotearoa in a quite a short time. So just want to thank you for spreading your thoughts and hopefully changing people's perspective on transport and place. I think the last 15 years, a lot of people, and part of the reason why I became a trustee of the Urban Room, got that in there, Ben, is because when we see the change that I think we should be being a part of in our spaces and places and neighbourhoods, like it gives me so much, I guess, need or want for this to continue, to changing the places, because I think you do get stuck in the mindset of the 7 cars as opposed to the hundreds of people who could spend time in that space. And if you think of Wynyard Quarter or Britomart or Tiko Mititanga, the different places that we have been able to see change, and a lot of people in this room have been a part of those, even in my own ward, the Hurstmere and the Waiwharariki Square there, there was a lot of, I've heard you speaking to Jack in the weekend around death threats and hate and anger towards the politicians who kind of led out that work. But we had over 60,000 people spending time in that space over the weekend for a Winter Lights, where they couldn't park there because the space was being used for the lights, so somehow people were getting there. And I think that magic of kids playing in what is technically a street but a public space, people were actually standing around, and instead of the time is money, their time spending money, because we gave them time in those spaces to dwell and enjoy it. And I think there is a lot of good examples, but we need to do more. I'm going to get everyone to come up to, I'm going to get Stacey and Lennart to come up to the space, but I just want to really acknowledge everyone in this room. I know we're all standing together literally, or feeling too nervous to sit if you didn't probably agree with everyone in the room, but I just want to acknowledge many of you are converted already, but I think you will be having these hard conversations in your roles and your work and your families to try and change people's perspectives. So thank you. I'll come down to the table. Hello. Hello. Do I need to turn it on? Hello. Oh. Right, so I just maybe we'll go to Stacey and Lennart first. And if you, Stacey, just want to, I guess, introduce yourself and any reflections on Marco's talk today, and maybe just, I guess, any reflections for the city in your role as well.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name's Stacey van der Putten. I'm the CEO of Auckland Transport. Really cool to be here. I think it's really nice hearing quite a different perspective from Marco, and obviously I've had the pleasure of spending some time with Marco today as well. One thing that we didn't really talk about here was about the proximity sort of conversation, and I've been thinking about that since I had that conversation earlier in the day about how Auckland is this massive, big city from a land perspective, and it's just huge, right? And it keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that whole proximity conversation gets really challenging for people, right? And you saw that in terms of people are still spending just as time, longer in traffic actually, because they're travelling longer distances, because that land use aspect in terms of we haven't necessarily maximised that. some recent reflections and having that conversation is it does give me heart that we're, as a city, thinking about where growth is going to happen and how people are going to live and how that can benefit people. But of course, all these things are, a big journey. So obviously we've got City Rail Link on the cusp of, sort of happening, and what that means to how people can access transport, can get around and live their lives in terms of the proximity with work, if we build up, if we do things differently, if we evolve as a city. And I think these are challenging conversations to have, but absolutely necessary ones, because everybody goes, they're not happy with it now, right? No, people say they're not happy with it now. So, but what are you willing to do to adapt and evolve with that is the flip side of that I think sometimes we shy away from a little bit. But yeah, I could go on.
No, thank you, Stacey. And I will say have had very, very good experiences with Stacey's leadership, and I'm so glad you're in the role you're in through this transition. It's definitely not easy for you and all of your team, but I'm hoping that we see really positive results out of it. She also tells me off for jaywalking on Fanshawe Street, but the light phases are too long.
We don't have the time.
Same with Lena, if you would, personal introduction, but any reflections as well.
Yeah. My name is Lennart Nout, Director of Mobicon Pacific, the New Zealand branch of a Dutch sustainable transportation consultancy. So very much in the transport system, but I do find myself as a little bit of a planner/engineer. So during the talk, I was reflecting on being guilty of that. Protected intersection was very triggering because that is one of the things that I talk about a lot and that I try to get cities to build. But what I think is interesting in this talk is that there is the two-track moves that have to happen at the same time. The proximity and improving the land use through planning to make sure that people don't have to travel as far, while at the same time making that travel better, safer, and more enjoyable. And I think one of the things that Auckland's really good at is it's a beautiful city, and you can have beautiful journeys along the way, but a lot of people are forced to be stuck in cars on motorways, which literally nobody enjoys. So that attractiveness element of our travel is, I think, a very important aspect that we often overlook, and then your time is money argument becomes a little bit different, and maybe then we can have that conversation about, okay, it might not be as fast, but it is much more enjoyable, so that putting a value on that will help move that conversation away from as fast as possible and aiming more for comfort and belonging and attractiveness.
Thank you very much, and thank you both for the work you do. Marco, I guess I'll do the age-old, I won't say, do you like our city? But I know you've only been in Tamaki Makaurau for less than 48 hours, so you wouldn't have had a lot of experience yet. But I guess what is some of the reflections of what we're doing well, but what we, apart from the wrongs, which I think many people in this room, know economically does not make a lot of sense. But I guess what are we doing well as a country, as a city, and where's some easy wins? Is there anything that we can do that would start to change things? We're about to do some big kind of transition to where local boards have a bit more say in their local communities. Is there anything you would advice for all of us or the city to act?
Wow, yes, small question, right? Well, first of all, I would like to advise the people in Auckland to be a bit more proud of what they're doing, because it's a great city. It has many of the conditions that many other cities would love to have, and you're doing great in making change happening at the same time, right? So it's hard to see even for a newcomer, but luckily you showed me some before-after images, and it's really spectacular what is changing in terms of streetscape, especially across the city center, but also on the North Shore. So that one of the other things is, and it's really exciting, and I know that everybody is hoping that it will be sooner than later, but the opening of the new rail line, I think will have a huge effect, and something that we will look back at in 30 to 40 years as a defining moment that changed sort of the way that people feel and think about the city as a place to live. So in that sense, I think you're doing some amazing stuff that we can all learn from. One very clear opportunity that you have, Mark and I have been doing the rounds of Auckland to go to all the meetings, and we use the Lime scooters, the public scooters for that. And one of the things also that's done, I think it's a great. So it's actually, if you use it in the city center, I don't know who uses it, but you get this turtle symbol that basically says it's speed governed, right? It has to go slow because it's the city center and it's for people that walk there. And it's a bit dismal if you're on it, but it's also a very good idea. And then I was thinking, what if Auckland would be the first city that uses the existing technology that is used for that for cars? Right? So it's right in front of you. Let's do it as an experiment. And I propose the following. So pick 10 schools, 10 elementary schools, and just say that in a 500 meter perimeter around the schools, between 8 and 9 in the morning, we govern the speed of cars. And they go as fast as the scooters go. I think it's 7 kilometers per hour. And you first do it with the car fleet that you have at the municipality. And then you will ask others to follow. It will be amazing what change that would have, right? Because I think building all these great stuff is all important, and we need to do that. But we also need to start chipping away the privileges that we have given to car drivers. And one of these privileges is to speed in our city centers, where our children are losing their freedom because of that behavior. So that's I would say a clear giveaway. If you do that, you will be suddenly the front runner of all the cities in the world, because we will all do it, and in 20 years from now we will look back and we cannot believe anymore that we had cars in our cities that were ungoverned and could go as fast as they wanted. So do it. It's easy.
Very easy. We're all living through the trauma of having all our safe speeds being ripped out and being banned from putting anything lower than 40. But yeah, there is a lot of good proposals from local boards to try and reduce speeds again in some areas that we had low speeds already. Speaking on that, Stacey, I guess we're in a 15, 16 years since the Super City was formed. There's lots of positives. There's obviously also a lot of challenges and pressures that have been on you and your team. I guess what's the opportunity with transport reform that we're going through, and how do you see, I guess, what we've heard tonight playing out through that process, if you've got any? And it's a small question again.
Yeah, I mean, that's got lots of different angles to that. I mean, I think that local decision-making aspect really empowers local boards to think differently and enable that, which I think is good. I think a lot of the times in recent years, and why we've got to where we've got to, is people feel like things have been done to them, not with them. So, local people are best to understand how they want to move within their community. So I think that's a positive thing. It's obviously going to be one of those things that we sort of have to work out and work with people to help them understand that going forth. I mean, I think we've become really passive as a nation with our feedback, and that's what, from a transport perspective, we're always in a situation where we have really noisy people over here, really noisy people over there, and then this silent majority in the middle that actually want good things, but their voices never get through. And I think it's really important that we try and encourage people to speak up and actually participate, because it's like you've talked about, we've continued to take things away from children, and things won't get better unless we do that. We'll still just not have everybody participating, so that's something.
And just another question for you, Stacey, connected to that. You soon, through the transition, will be leading the public transport CCO, and the bits between the houses, I guess the public space and roads and neighbourhoods will be up to local boards and governing body. How do you feel, or do you feel like you will be able to use your voice to ensure the public transport system works with all the other components? We've got the City Rail Link opening, but some of that only works if the public space is interesting, friendly, safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's one of the biggest risks, and we were talking about it before. The worry from a public transport perspective is that we become the poor cousin, in terms of how that works. We're also at risk of public transport is not a function all of its own. We're heavily dependent to make sure that first leg, last leg that cityscape proposition to how people actually access public transport is robust and works for the system and works together complementary. So I think, again, it's one of those things that are going to require constant sort of participation, but there's mutually beneficial goals that AT will have with Auckland Council in order to make sure of that, right? And it's up to us as leaders to make sure that happens. And I mean, statistically speaking, that's going to be obvious to everybody as well, right? So we'll be held accountable for that.
Thank you. Lena, I'll ask one more from the prepared questions and I'll go to we're getting quite a few through the Slido. But your job is taking the Dutch approach and making it work somewhere else. I guess what breaks in the translation between the two, and what do cities get wrong when they try to copy the Netherlands?
Yeah, so don't listen to Marco. He said there is good things to learn from Dutch people that say, give us all your money and we'll solve your problems. No, but more seriously, a lot of people go to the Netherlands, they look at the video from Amsterdam and say, oh, that would never work here because it looks different, or, Dutch people are different, or whatever excuse they find. What I find interesting is that behind the things that you see, the infrastructure that you see, there is a political decision-making system that's quite interesting and I think quite different from Anglo-Saxon ways of doing things. And I think we can learn a lot from that in terms of accountability, but also in taking ownership and championing certain changes in the city. But secondly, also the way the infrastructure looks reflects the values that underpin it. And that's what I try to bring in my work. What do we value in the street, and how can we make sure that what we value actually gets shown up? Because like Marco said, most people don't like the streets full of cars, and they don't value their car parking as highly as they say because they value other things more. But through some weird mechanism, we end up with streets that look like this. And I think the Netherlands is not a perfect system, but they have gotten a little bit better, especially in the major cities, of getting an infrastructure that reflects better on the way people like to see what the city looks like and the way they like to move. I lived in Utrecht for 5 years, and that was, I think, one of the better examples of a city really taking on board that transition and making really big, bold moves to tackle the big problems and not just chipping away at the little things around the edges. And I think that connection between value and what you actually see on the street is something that gets lost in translation, and people just look at an protected intersection and say, oh, well, that's not what we can fit. So, yeah.
I might just ask you, Leonard, a question from the Slido that's connected to this. We know what we need to do, but we are crippled by delay and inaction. How do we give license to organizations to act and urgency to our politicians?
Oh, just a little question. I think the license to act is built by trust, and I think trust is built by showing you can deliver. So there is a very complex set of processes that underpin that. One of my personal pet peeves is that I think we over-consult. We ask people for the RLTP or the long-term plans, what do you want? And we get a very clear answer. And then we program and we say we're going to do all of this, and then we're going to come back. Oh, we're thinking of this project. How do you want it to look? And then we come back and back and back and back. And I think at some stage people are just like, well, it's been 3 years of consultation. I think some decisiveness would help in that, and that I don't have the perfect answer, of course, because otherwise I probably would have gotten that Nobel Prize by now. But that political leadership of taking something, championing it through the whole process, and getting it done within one term would really help build that trust and help people be engaged and know that their engagement leads to something concrete.
Talking about engagement, and I won't take you through the last 5 years of Plan Change 78 and Plan Change 120 and the MDRS and the MP. No, I won't go into it. But I chair the Policy Planning and Development Committee, and we've been doing some plans and consulting a lot. And I think we've probably hit an okay space now with some, zoning that will go out to public consultation. I won't keep boring you with it, but it's focusing around bus stations, train stations, bus corridors, town centres. My question is, because it's here in the Slido, the next Auckland plan is in its early stages. I'm thinking this is related to the spatial plan. So we're going to basically have a new plan for Auckland that builds on what we already have. How would we utilise the opportunity, and how might a bold vision survive local and central political cycles? Do you have some ideas? Like, we can talk about the panacea, but how do you see great stuff lasting out?
Well, I have the luxury to reflect on these things from an outsider perspective, so I'm not being bogged down by the real conditions. So it's also, I hope that you take that into account in my answer. But I think listening to many of these things, I really think that it's not unexpected. I think it's in the language that we use. And the language here is we should stop limiting the definition of the problem and plans to mobility or land use, because there's a huge turnout today, but most people of Auckland are not here. I did some counting, and I think most people are still at home. Most people, by far 80 to 90, maybe 95%, are not interested in any of this. They're just leading their lives. They have all the pressures around them, and they don't want to hear another thing about mobility, cars, bikes, all these things, all the abbreviations that you use. That's not what matters to people. And one of the lessons in the Netherlands in the 70s and later was that the real change came when we connected change to values that mattered for people. One of the negative ones that really stood out and really was influential was Stop the Kindermoord movement. It was literally stop killing children. That rallied people to the street, not build a bicycle lane. It was stop killing our children. That really got parents. You should watch the videos. They were really street fights. They were fighting with car drivers that were going through their activism protests. So I would say do that, learn from that, but really bring the values to the table. If you're early on in this, especially then, don't let it be bogged down in the details of mobility, because then that's sort of the boring stuff. It should really first be about what is the vision. And I think also that's, and I don't believe in a political leader that would suddenly appear and be the guru of the city. That's not how change happens. At first, there needs to be a ground movement that connects the dots, right? And that says, look, these mobility issues are connected to the mental well-being of our children. They're connected to the ways that the elderly have access to important health facilities. It's connected to equity and inclusivity. And these things are matter for people, right? We shouldn't negotiate about the well-being and happiness of children. We shouldn't negotiate about the dignity of the lives of elderly and people that are mobility impaired. So we should put that front and center, and I'm certain that part of the silent majority will then speak up, because that's the things that they care about. So I would definitely have that, and then you create the conditions, the necessary conditions, not the sufficient conditions, for a politician to say, I'm stepping into this, because I suddenly see that there's a huge constituency that actually wants change in the city. Don't think that you are a minority. Like, there is, in every city that we studied so far, there's a silent majority of around 80%, it's very stable, conservative or progressive cities, that actually want to live in greener, safer, and nicer cities. But they are just not connecting the dots. And the things that they read in the newspaper and hear on the YouTube channels, and even here in places like this, is for them not connected to that. Connect it, ask them, get a mandate, and then do it.
Thank you. That's easy.
It's easy, yeah. It's actually, it's all pretty easy.
Yeah. Stacey, building on that, and I don't want to box you into the role you're in, but I guess what's your vision to get that vision? You know, how can we, you're pretty good at selling a message, the hard stuff, the good stuff, but what is sort of your vision of what's good, and how do you see, you know, Auckland moving with those ideas? Anything you want to say really about how we can, I guess, change hearts and minds, but also get kids back into our streets?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of what Marco just said, yeah, in fairness to that. I mean, I think we all have some of the things we want, right? So we all want to be able to have options to get around safely and reliably, and to be able to have a good experience doing that. Yeah, we all want that. Nobody wants to be stuck in a car going nowhere. Nobody wants that. Yeah, and so I think it is how you frame it. I agree with that in terms of it, and so It's like when we talked about safe speeds around schools. No one says that's a bad idea because everybody wants to look out for children and keep children safe, right? It's that's the thing, right? But it's but we're all humans and we all want to get around safely. And so creating a system where we can have better conversations on actually what we want to achieve is probably the start point rather than going, I hate speed bumps, yeah? And because that's kind of where we've got to, because that's just where the conversation has gone, and speed bumps are bad, make cars go faster. It's not necessarily what people want, it's probably some of the messaging that went with that at the time, yeah? And so you get the push against, and I think that's not necessarily a political cycle thing. I think there's been a whole big combination of things that have happened in recent years where people just get sick of being told what to do, yeah? And so some of the narrative needs to evolve again.
One of the things I want to add to that is I think it's indeed it's thinking about the frame, but also realizing that the status quo is just as good as it's just also a frame.
Yeah.
Because it's often seen that, oh, you're framing it around children. Oh, that's a very nasty frame. Well, framing it around traffic engineering is also just so we just came up with it in the 1930s. So that really helps. And one of the things that I think really helps, and I noted that in the end, is to see citizens not as consumers. So we tend to ask them questions as if they are buying an iPhone. So you say, do you want this iPhone or that iPhone? So in the Netherlands, we are very good at asking people, do you want to pay for parking or do you want it for free? So ask a Dutch person, do you want to have free beer or do you want to pay for the beer? What do you think happens? Well, in that dichotomy, they tell us as consumers, they'd rather have free parking. Yeah. But the deputy mayor of Groningen told us, well, if you ask people where to park their car, they all say in front of their house. But if you instead ask them, in what kind of street do you want to live? None of them say, I want to live in a street where everybody parks their car. So it really matters how we asking the question to the citizens. And one tool we use, if you're interested in changing that conversation, it's called participatory value evaluation. And it simply asks a question, but it doesn't allow people to say, I want everything. It asks them, okay, our public space is scarce, it's an important resource, and it needs to cater many different goals. Tell us which goals you think deserve more attention and which less. And you can only press submit if it balances each other out. So you force people to make choices. One surprise, people are actually very good in doing this. The second surprise is they're much more progressive than we think. And the third surprise is after these exercises, they have a much better understanding and support for governance. Because they understand now better that instead of asking them a dichotomy, they understand better that there are trade-offs to be made and that their input is valued, but they can't sort of, like, listening to a voice cannot be a veto, right? If you like your car to go vroom vroom, that's all very nice, but it's up to the decision makers to really safeguard the needs of the wider society. So I think, yeah. And again, it's not saying that you are not doing that. I think you're doing a great job. But I would say I understood that in 2 years from now there's a local election. So we should all now work in our new narratives and not be bobo and help the politicians in the next round to really speak out on this theme. Like what is there on the ballot in terms of what the streets in the next decade or so will be focusing on. So force them, keep asking them the hard question and say, what is it? What are your core values? Tell us. And stop talking about congestion and transit-oriented development, but tell us what are the things that matter and why should I vote on you? What we see everywhere, and one example that we talked about earlier, Anne Hidalgo in Paris being re-elected because she simply said, if you vote for me, I will create a city where you can have a good life without being dependent on fast mobility. Political suicide, everybody said. She won the elections, got a 6-year mandate, and if you want to see what change looks like, Google Paris. It's really amazing. And Auckland can be the next one. So I was thinking, what if I don't know if there are people with political aspirations in the room, but maybe Auckland can be the first worldwide city where children from the age of 8 actually have the right to be autonomous and safe and take part in society. It's a United Nations treaty right. I checked, New Zealand ratified the United Nations Treaty on Children's Rights. So get on with it. And let Auckland be the first city that gets it done. Yeah. World leading city.
It's very good. You're going to come here and run for office.
No, so you don't need me to open the door. That's the Bobo again. You can do it. You can be the one. You can step through the door.
I'll think about it. Lennart, you've worked in this space for a while. Also, your private life, advocated for better urban spaces and safer urban spaces. I guess there's a question here around downtown Auckland, or shall we say the city centre maybe has a branding issue, at least on social media. Some of that might be to do with the access. But I guess in my experience, or for people who actually come here every day, it's really amazing. It's just how do we get that reputation to change without forcing people here, I guess. And it also says that Amsterdam had similar reputational challenges a long time ago. So how could we challenge this narrative?
Another small question. So I did decide not to go on social media anymore, but I have an exception for Reddit. And on Reddit recently there was a post from somebody from Melbourne who had a raving review of Auckland after living here for a year. Said the coffee's better, the streets are better, the vibe is better. And they got a lot of negative comments from Aucklanders on it, which was...
Please
and then
hate us.
He edited it and said, apparently you can't say nice things about Auckland, that's interesting. So yes, I think the city centre has an image issue, but I think that's only for people who haven't been in a while. They still have that image of Auckland during COVID or right after COVID. They've been to Queen Street or the IMAX theatre and they think, this is not a happy place. I recently went to IMAX theatre. It's not a happy place. And so they're right about that. But Auckland has shifted direction. It's not the Queen Street Valley that's the center. It's the waterfront that's the center. And I think there's nobody that goes to the waterfront and thinks, oh, wow, this is a really sad place to be. So yes, I hope that CRL, well, I don't want to put too much pressure on the train line, but I hope that will help bring people back. I think there's a lot we can do to invite people back, invite children back. I think Wynyard Quarter is doing really well in that regard, but do more to invite the families from the further suburbs with their children back into the city and show them what it's actually like now. Because it's a good place, and the vibe is shifting definitely, and it's getting better and better every year. So in that sense, yes, there's an image issue. Amsterdam had an image issue, and they decided to, go hard and try to not invite any more tourists. So different approach. I think we should invite more people and get them to experience it for themselves.
Thank you. And I put up before and after photos, or I try and put lots of positive stuff on my Facebook and Instagram. And those before and after photos I showed you were the most shared and liked things in a long time on my social media, and they got shared everywhere. I had a meeting with the new Consul General of the UK, and she's like, I saw these amazing before and after photos of the city, and I was like, that was me. So it takes all of us, I think, to do that, to kind of get people to imagine what's right in front of them, just a quick bus ride or soon train ride in. I think
we need more of that,
yeah,
right? Quay Street, I think Quay Street is the best example. If you look at Quay Street 2013, awful. Now I think it is one of the most beautiful streets in the Southern Hemisphere. Let's call Southern Hemisphere, maybe Northern Hemisphere as well. But we need the next one. We need more of that quicker.
And I think ideally you have more of these in experimental setup, so you can also be more open and humble. That the real primeval forest lesson here is that we shouldn't replace one type of trees in the production forest that dies with a new type that is beetle resistant, but instead going back to the primeval forest. So one video, if you want to watch a video later this week that I really admire on that, it's called The Biggest Little Farm. If you haven't seen it, it's really great. And I think we need a similar perspective on our street. So it's basically looking at a farm as a complex system, and so it's a bit of a spoiler if you haven't seen it. But over the episode, you see the farmer becoming more humble and more reflexive and taking a step back, saying we don't know exactly what the future will hold, but it means that I need to experiment. And I would also really sort of advise the city to become a bit more experimental, in the sense that it's fine to change a street for a week or maybe even an hour, and then you have your before-after image immediately, and people have a lived experience. So one example of that I showed also earlier today is the Bosk project in Leeuwarden, where they actually had 1,100 trees as a forest walking through the city and basically reforesting squares and streets for a week. 11 places and for a week at a time. It's great. The images are great. The experience is great. But the city now has a huge problem because everybody that lived on those streets wants the trees back. Because after removing, so if you bring a forest for a week, then removing it feels like a loss. So you can also use experimentation much more as a quicker way forward. And it's not piloting. It's really sort of this engaging in a humble way to see what the city can also have in terms of street space. So that's I also think is a missed opportunity. If we continue to get bogged down in these long-term processes, we are missing the opportunity right here and now to start changing things.
Yeah, absolutely. The Quay Street, if you haven't been down there, is, that was 6 lanes of traffic, and I remember the hate we got at the time, and a lot of anger, a lot of bad headlines. But now it's 200 mature native trees, 51 gardens, 20 rain gardens. I think it was about 22,000 vehicles a day. Now it's less than 8,000 a day, and it's like full of people and hospitality, and Ngāti Whātua, mana whenua have the responsibility for all the trees and the planting and the undergrowth, and it's just a great story. But I imagine if we put a consultation out tomorrow to rip it up and put back 6 lanes, we would get a lot of backlash for that. So.
Try it. Groningen actually did that. So they had one park where you even have to tell this to Groningers because they don't know it, but where cars were in the park, and then they had a referendum, 51% win, and they removed the cars from the park because of that, so it was a very small win. And then 15 years later, they redid the referendum and asked people who is in favor of putting the cars back in the park. I think it was still 4%, so apparently there are still people that think it's a good idea. But the lesson there is, and this is repeated over cities over and over and over again, from the 1977 traffic circulation plan in Groningen to Paris now, resistance will always be there, but resistance is always temporary. And if you don't like resistance and you're an elected official, you've taken the wrong job, right? And I don't wish anybody death threats or hate, but we also need to learn that there will be resistance if we want to make the city better. There will be people that lose something. We should take them seriously, but they should not have a veto. They should not make us fear change. We should be courageous and curious to sort of explore together how the city can become a better place.
I think you're right on that. If we're not getting some resistance, we're probably not doing our job.
Right thing, yeah.
Definitely getting grey hairs from it. But I don't know how much longer are we close? Okay. Just one for Stacey. We keep separating modes with more and more types of paths, cars from pedestrians, buses from cars, scooters from bikes, etc. Is there a way, in your view, we could do this better? I know we have seen some examples of that, having everyone bump into each other. But is there a way you think we can undo some of that or improve some of that?
Yes, I guess. There's always a way you can undo that. And I did see something on the chat actually before I come up here about, we have e-bikes now, and if you've got a shared pass and you've got people walking and you got e-bikes whizzing past at a great rate of knots, and same with e-scooters, it can be really, really intimidating as a walker. So I think some of these things do have to sort of naturally evolve in terms of that. And you were talking about e-bikes too, right? In terms of that participation aspect too, and how they're almost like mini cars these days. And so particularly in your urban areas, you can get really challenged, and we probably do need to think differently about how we plan for that going forward.
But I think so. It's a longer joke. It's a famous joke of the car driver, the cyclist, and the pedestrian go into a bar. There are 10 beers, and then the car driver takes 8 of them and says to the pedestrian, "Look out! The cyclist wants after your beer." The sad part of the joke is that he drinks then 8 beers, goes out and kills the cyclist. But I think also here, I think the starting point of traffic engineering is that we talk about shared paths. But we need to talk about the separated lanes for car drivers that gets most space of the street. Yeah. And again, as soon as you sort of speed regulate them, you solve the problem.
You do.
So I think this divide and conquer approach to giving everybody their own pipelines
Yeah.
is also in Amsterdam still a thing, right? We're still discussing, can we get another lane for the faster bike? Can we get another lane? No, space is limited. So we've reached the point that the only logical conclusion is that we have to go back to sharing the street, and the only way to do that is to reduce the fatal danger that especially motorized vehicles pose on us. And as soon as you take that out, it's done. Like we can just walk on the street again. We don't have to be pedestrians. We can stroll or waddle or wobble or whatever we want.
Children should be allowed to wobble.
Yeah, that's their right.
That was a good headline. Lennart, I'm going to go back this way for a final thought, and maybe something around what's a perfect space in Auckland or overseas, that you've experienced with your family or that you see as the kind of panacea, how we're doing it and why it made you feel great, I guess.
The perfect space. Oh, that obviously doesn't exist. A trick question, I see you. One of my favorite spaces was in a very unexpected location. We did work in Tirana in Albania, which I had a very different mental image of than what it turned out to be on the ground. But the first time we visited, we went to see their main square, which was basically a giant roundabout with about 4 lanes of traffic going in one direction constantly. And the mayor had very ambitious plans. And he said, we're pedestrianizing this whole thing. It'll be amazing. He had a small model. And we were like, oh, yeah, sure, that sounds ambitious. And it's like, well, next time you're back, I'll show you. I was like, okay, cool. So a year later, I think it was a year later, we came back, and he did do it. He had removed all the cars and built probably my favorite public space of all times. It's a very gentle pyramid that goes up to the middle of the square. It's huge. And it's really hard to do a massive public space well. But in this climate and in these conditions, giant mature trees on the side, car parking garage underneath, so, there was still space for that. But it immediately unlocked so much public life. Like that became the heart of the city. Heart of the city. I use it's fine. Taking one of the arteries out is actually fine. And it doesn't cause a heart attack. And sitting there and seeing children ride across in all different directions, you create that beautiful space where even I was very skeptical of that being possible. So, yeah, I think that was a lesson. It doesn't matter where you are. We're all struggling with the same issues. And maybe the water engineers had a thing that if you just turn up the heat, the water will evaporate, and the same happens with cars. So we should have faith in our hydraulics engineers and go for it.
Stacey, same question.
In terms of things I like?
Well, I guess imagine the best place. Maybe you've been there, maybe you haven't. What is that space for you that says everything Marco was talking about today?
Yeah, last year I went to Hamburg, and they had recently sort of embarked on quite a ambitious program of pedestrianising a lot of their public spaces and around the central area, as well as removing lanes of traffic down to single lanes and things like that. And just from a visitor to the city aspect, being able to walk around everywhere with a lot of confidence and get about was just so lovely. It was really, really nice. And they had taken away a lot of their public transport over the years, very kind of a similar sort of history in a way with Auckland, right? And so they had a very car-focused sort of aspect and had been unwinding some of that. And it was just great to see what could be done with some political ambition in terms of that, and create really nice spaces where people could mix and mingle and use bikes as well as people on foot. I walk a lot. And one of my favourite projects that AT's ever done, actually, and it's this while ago now, is actually Franklin Road. Because I used to walk up and down there on my way to work and trip over all those tree knots and everything like that. And from an accessibility perspective, particularly being a real central area, it was horrible. And so just, creating those lovely spaces in our most uninvested mode, that being walking, and our passes, I think, provides good bang for a buck, particularly in those urban areas, to get people actually out and walking about their communities. Yeah.
Thank you. And Marco, I guess either last amazing space, or last thought for us as Tamaki Makaurau before you leave to your next tour?
I tried to combine. I will try to combine it because I think the great spaces are the ones where we manage to have a better conversation about what the space should be. Right? It's not. I think it's not, at least not up to me as an academic and social scientist to say what the best space is. But it's one where we have heavily disagreed, I would say, with each other on what are the most important values there, and we've managed to make it anyway. And I will give three very short examples. One is the city of Amsterdam, where I'm located. That managed to shift the conversation by renaming basically their policy program from Amsterdam Carlo or Autoluw Amsterdam, which was a very negative program of about 15 years. They now call it Amsterdam maakt ruimte, which means Amsterdam makes space. And suddenly they basically included in the entire conversation all the deputy mayors and all the people that need space to join at the table. Actually became they have now 3 years in the program, and they have an annual conference on Amsterdam maakt ruimte. It's spectacular how positive the vibe is and how everybody's sort of embracing this positive program. So that's, I think, a good example. The second one is the city of Wageningen, because you're not Amsterdam, you're not Paris, but maybe you're the city of Wageningen. The city of Wageningen did something similar, but they said, well, instead of having all these different holistic visions, we also need a North Star. And in their mobility vision, or even the mobility transition vision, the first sentence literally says, in 2045, all the citizens of Wageningen from the age of 8 have the indispensable right to be autonomous and safe participants of society. Boom. Unanimously agreed. Nobody was against this. Will it be easy? No. But let's see how far they got, right? They really decentered the conversation. And that's something that I want to give to all of you. Decenter the conversation. Stop talking about mobility to your friends, families, and people that you hate. Start talking about the things that matter. And the final example of that, and we already discussed it a few times, is the city of Paris, that shows that if you manage to do it well, if you manage to develop a narrative that actually activates the silent majority, you will be re-elected. You actually will have a great time. You will activate all the people that do not hate you, but actually already love you, but are unable to sort of connect the dots. So I really hope that today sort of inspired this entire room, and I will keep an eye on all of you. The first thing that I want you to do is, after this meeting, go to LinkedIn and change your job title into something that is positive and is all about what you want the city to be. And then I will come back in 5 years and see how well you did. Is that a deal?
Deal.
Okay, deal.
Thank you. Kia ora. I won't talk about the big spaces, but when I was a kid, I kind of really took it for granted. We lived in a little cul-de-sac in Glenfield, and like no exit street, and we just played on the road. We didn't have a backyard, but we played on the road all day until it was dark, and we had ramps and bikes and balls, and there would just be one of us had to be the spotter where we'd be like, "Car!" like at the top of the street. And I just remember that was just so normal, but I know now as having a son who's almost 5 that actually, we have to be with him no matter where he is going outside the gate. So it is on all of us, including me as a politician, to keep trying to get some of that back for as many. It's
a great story for conservatives, right? It's really playing on the nostalgia of,
yeah.
Do you remember playing on the street, playing rugby or cricket?
Yeah.
So shouldn't the children have the same right today?
Yeah.
Yeah, as well.
And we shouldn't need a pandemic to do that.
No.
Well, I just want to quickly say thank you to Ashley and the Auckland Conversations team. Thank you so much again for putting all this together. Ben and the Urban Room, please donate and go and join and everything. That's me speaking as a trustee, not a councillor. Of the Urban Room, Ben and the team are trying. It's Ben, really. But, trying to have this conversation and permanently have a space in the city centre to discuss this, to bring people in and have more of these kinds of conversations. I want to thank if we could have a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you so much, and thanks so much to Marco. Thank you for giving your all. I know you must be really exhausted, but it's great that you and your family...
Energized by you. What a room.
Okay, good.
It's like a...
And I'll just quickly close with a karakia, but thank you. Please travel safe tonight, and hopefully next time we'll be in this room. Hopefully some of you might have walked out of the train station just over there. So, ka whakairia te tapu kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūruki whakataha ai, kia tūruki whakataha ai, homie huie tai kie. And that was for Marco. Restrictions are moved aside, so the pathway is clear. So return to everyday activities, enriched, unified, and blessed.
Wow.
So, kia ora everyone. Thank you very, very much.